Welcome to The Growth Show with Matt Lindsay, where we discuss growth strategies both for business and a personal perspective, discussing all kinds of businesses, growth strategies, technology, investment strategy, and much more. We are meeting with entrepreneurs, investors, app developers, and property developers. Our vision is to help 10,000 business owners grow their businesses. Introducing our host, Matt Lindsay. Matt is a former banker and corporate financier. He now spends his time building his own companies organically and through acquisition, as well as raising capital for other businesses. Matt works with a wide variety of entrepreneurs and investors.
Welcome, Mr. Stephen Page of Startup Funding Club, or SFC Capital now. You're now called as well.
Yep.
Welcome along to the. It was originally called the Matt Lindsay Business Growth Show, but I've just changed it to the Growth Show because I think there's more to be said around not just business but general growth in terms of people's health and so on and so forth. So yeah, the idea is to get lots of guests along and hopefully, inspire people to make a bit of a difference in their lives and maybe start that business that they've been thinking about. And that's why I thought you'd be an appropriate guest. So here you are.
Let's have a chat.
So by way of background for our viewers and listeners and whatever formats people might be consuming this information, Stephen and I have known each other for probably 8 or 9 years. Is that?
Yeah, it must be now.
Right? Yeah. And so this is back in the day when I was running around raising capital for funds, so raising investment for EIS funds and all that fun stuff. Stephen and his partner at that time, John, approached me with a new SEIS fund, so it's the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme Fund, called Startup Funding Club. And from memory, we raised, it was about 600-700 grand, wasn't it, for the first one?
Mm-hmm.
So you've obviously subsequently
more than that in total. I think it was more than that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And you've obviously subsequently taken that business forward. And I know that actually some of the companies we raised money for, particularly on Fido, are doing very well. They're integrated in all kinds of things now. So I thought it'd be useful for our listeners to kind of learn a little bit about your background and experience, which I know was in software and so on and so forth, and then bringing it forward to launching Startup Funding Club, where you are today. Obviously, we used to share an office, so we knew each other fairly well at that time. And I attended lots of your events at Home House and other private members clubs across central London. It's fair to say, multi-award-winning team. You've won lots of awards. Yes, really nice to see you guys prosper, because I think the fund industry, there's some bastards in there, isn't there? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And I think the way that you guys approach it is a bit more pleasant than some of the competitors out there, without naming names. I think it's kind of a bit of a light, refreshing breath of fresh air to see people that are approaching it. It's still a business and you're still looking to make money out of these things, but I think there's a bit more kind of love and care for the companies that you've invested into. I've said a lot already. So, but if we could start with a bit of your kind of history and your background and how you came to get to where you are, that'd be a really good starting point.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. And as you say, we've known each other for 8 or 9 years, and it's been a very interesting time for SFC in that period, which I'll talk a bit about later. But a little bit about me personally to start with. So when I didn't go to university, I left school at 18. I had some A-levels. I went into accountancy, went and did articles for certified accountant. Didn't finish it because I got itchy feet. I wasn't particularly suited to just becoming a boring accountant. So an opportunity came up. It was quite, I think one of the things in life that I've learned is you have to watch for opportunities. And a couple of things happened to me in my early 20s that sort of led me on to being something I didn't think I would be, which was an entrepreneur. And one was meeting a guy. I went and did the accounts for a road haulage company, small, but this guy was a real Jack the Lad guy from the East End, and he drove a Rolls Royce and had, 10, 20 lorries delivering stuff. And but he was really entrepreneurial. And a key turning point for me was when he said, and I was 23 or something, he said, come to London with me. So I went to London with him, and he went to Savile Row, and he was a real East End guy. I mean, he was sort of a big East End guy. And we went into one of the tailors there, and he got a handmade suit for himself. And I'm just sitting there waiting like a little child on the seat. And he said, come here. And I said, oh, okay, yeah. And he said, get yourself a suit. So I had a handmade suit at the age of 23 or 24. And I'll never forget, it was such a change. It was, I'd never, I didn't believe that I could be in that sort of world. And I'd come from a very modest but loving family, but not at all moneyed, very poor really, in any real sense. So that was the first thing. And then that sort of opened my eyes up to some of the things that are possible. Just that one event, never to be forgotten. And then I went, and that said to me, you don't need to go and work for a big company. Go and try and work for a small company. And so I joined a person who became my mentor in life. And one of the things I would always say to people is find people who can be your mentors, people who are not going to be competitive to you, but can really help you grow. And this guy was a chartered accountant, and he was looking for someone to become he was a one-man band really. And he was looking for someone to be his computer or data processing manager. I'd never touched the computer. I didn't know anything about computers or anything, but I thought, this is interesting. I'll go and see what it is. And I met him in a pub. He interviewed me in the pub, and he had extremely well-spoken public school background, beyond, like Rees-Mogg, this sort of accent. And I thought, oh my God, what is this? But cut long story short, he employed me as his sort of junior partner in literally a tiny little chartered accountancy firm. And so that was like 1978 or 79. And so I did that. And then I went to I then went to his office in Ilford, Essex. And when I got there, he was away. And I thought, geez, what's this about? And he was away on a month's holiday sailing in the Mediterranean. I thought, that's nice. So he's just left me. What the hell do I do? So I was sort of thrown in at the deep end, and they were delivering. In those days, you'd send computer stuff away and it would come back on big printouts and things. And I had never dealt with this before. But so I had to learn very quickly what to do with these 4 clients, so there was a number of clients and we had this stuff. So that was and then what happened was the microcomputer, as it was called in those days, started to emerge. And he was quite entrepreneurial as a person. And I was getting quite, interested in doing something. And he'd been very kind to me, and he was such a good person for me. And one day we said, well, why don't we import one of these new microcomputers from California? So I've forgotten if it was my idea or his. And we imported a box this size from California, and £3,000 it was. Did nothing. I mean, you wouldn't even get it on your anything now. It's like a phone is 100 times more powerful than that big box. But that sort of started an entrepreneurial career, really, because although we didn't do anything specifically in hardware, that led us to think, well, we've got this big box, what are we going to do with it? So the only thing we could think, well, we're accountants, let's design some accounting software. So we hired a programmer and started to build some accounting software. I went out and sold this to some clients, and it was crap, the software, but that's a detail. British Beef was the first major client, and I'll never forget, I used to go to Smithfield Market first thing in the morning, and they were, all the traders were there. They were in the pubs mainly, but British Beef was using our software for accounting, which was in 1980, 81. Quite incredible. And we sold some of this rubbish. It was really not very good software, but there was nothing else about. So we were first in the market, one of the first in the market. And then following that, we then realized that, oh my God, that, we're not going to be able to compete, because by then Sage had come out, and some others like that were just starting to come through, and they'd put a lot of money into it. And so we thought we need to find a way to get out of this. So again, serendipitously, I met a guy who ran another software company. So my company was called Business Solutions. His company was called Sapphire Systems, and he had financial modeling software. So cut that quickly. We merged the two companies. So we actually had two products that were not very good. They were neither very good because it was early 80s and most software wasn't. So, but then we put them together, and now we had 10 people, 12 people, and we then went out and got 150 grand funding.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. So you went and raised capital?
Went and raised capital from a private individual, actually.
Right, okay.
And, but then we realized that, as I say, our financial modeling software was before spreadsheets.
Right.
How you used to do your financial forecasting and stuff. So it was pretty old fashioned, but it was good stuff. But and we sold bucket loads of it to computer hardware companies who were bundling software all the time. There was hundreds of computer hardware companies in those days. But then Lotus 1, 2, 3 came out, and that market went. Our accounting market had dropped anyway. So we found ourselves without a product, and 10 or 12 people. This guy had invested. We thought, bloody hell, we need to do something quickly. So me and this guy went off to Comdex in Atlanta, Georgia, thinking we've got to find something. We didn't know what, because we, again, it was purely opportunistic. But we knew that, they're talking about this thing called a database software or something like that. Let's try and find something like that. So we went to this big show, massive show, with all these old Rank Xerox and people like that were the big players in those days, NCR. And right at the back of the show, a tiny little one-man booth, was this company called Data Ease, and they had a product they'd just literally that at the show launched.
Right.
And we looked at this piece of software and we thought, wow, that's nice. We then they gave us a floppy disk, so we went back and had a look at it. I mean, it was the number of bugs in it was more bugs than has ever been created. It was fell over all over the place. Nevertheless, it had something about it. And opportunistically, me and this guy, Trevor, we said, well, we need to secure the rights to this to UK. Otherwise, someone else will get it. I mean, they've only just launched it. They're not funded yet, which they weren't. And so we then borrowed 50 grand on our credit cards because we'd run out of money in the company. We borrowed the 50K from they wanted $50,000 up front to secure the rights to the UK,
right?
Which was pretty, a lot of money. And so we took a big risk and borrowed that money, we'd have to repay it very soon. And we put a down payment, we put the 50 grand down, and we got the exclusive rights to Data Ease for the UK.
Okay.
We then launched that. We got these 15 people. Luckily, we've still got some money. We've not got any revenues at the time. So we carried on till the end, 1983. And by the end of that year, we because it was so buggy, we couldn't sell any.
Right.
But we had a great team. And this is a this is the biggest thing I've learned in business. If you don't have a good team, great team, you will fail. What we had done, because of the experience we had with the accounting software and the financial modeling software, we had a great team. We'd got really sales-centric people. So we had top salesmen. We had 12 or 15 people. Most, let's say half or a third of them were sales and marketing. And really gearing up to launch this product, which we've only just learned about what is it really, but we launched it in January 84. And straight away, because we'd sort of built up some momentum, straight away from a zero standing, we did £250,000 in the first year, 750,000 second year, 2.5 million in the third year, maybe 6 or 7 million in the fourth year.
Wow. Okay.
And this is really now doing this.
Yeah.
And we're starting to ramp up. We've obviously got ourselves a real winner, but we didn't own it.
Right.
So this was the big problem. So how the hell are we going to sort that out? At the same time, we also took on another accounting product. So what we'd learned was, if we can't build it ourselves, let's take on another product and release that. Yeah. So we took on a product called Sun Account, which was a great, really big, quite a big accounting system, not Sage level, but higher. And we became the distributor for it. Okay. And we also found that was doing that. So we started to build two teams, one on accounting, one on database. And we started to make money. And so 88, I got into acquisition mode. 1988, 1989, 1990, bought 7 companies.
Oh, wow.
Each one cost us about $500,000 in cash, roughly.
Yeah.
Because we were making, by the late 80s, we were making a couple of million a year profit. And so I could go out and buy all this. Most of it was rubbish, but these companies. And so we were expanding like this. And I remember going to the stock exchange in 89 and saying, right, we're ready to go public. We've got 20 million in revenue.
Yeah.
A couple of million in profits before acquisition. And they said, well, look, all of your profits really are coming from data EIS, which was true. Probably half our revenues were coming from data EIS, but most of our profit. Mm. You can't go public unless you own the product.
Right.
So we couldn't go public. By then we'd raised some VC money also. 3 Eyes, some others came in because we were a very hot company. And during all that process, I was the CEO. We had others, and we built up a very good team, really, really good team. And but we didn't own the software. So the American company that owned the software were not as successful. They were jealous of us, despite we were paying them about $500,000 a month in royalties. But we were very self-sufficient. We made our own software. We were totally, and we'd also added other territories, Australia, Italy, other places we were now exclusive in. So we were very, very strong. They didn't like it. They were sort of not very happy that we were so successful. And so we started to talk about merging. Right. Because they owned the software, they said they wanted 60% of the merged company, we'd get 40%. I said, no way. We're the cash generator. We're the sales and marketing type company. We should put the two together at 50-50.
Yeah.
Took 3 years because
Right.
they were and this is the biggest mistake ever made. It took 3 years to merge. It went through all sorts of, in the end, it was a legal battle and a shotgun wedding took place. And we ended up actually with 55% and then 45. So it was a war, which it should never have been. And that is one of the biggest mistakes. But the biggest of all mistake, during that 3 years, Lotus, the 1, 2, 3 people, offered to buy data EIS.
Right.
We hadn't merged yet. The owners of data EIS said, Lotus obviously knew we were the main player in data EIS's book because we were selling so much of this stuff. They called us into their offices in Cambridge, Boston, and over this massive breakfast, 25, 30 people, all the hierarchy of Lotus, which was a big company then.
Yeah.
And they said, we're buying Data EIS. We're not, but we would like you to be the distributor for, but not in the same terms you've got now, etc. To which I said, obviously, as you can imagine, well, we actually have, this is another lesson, by the way, we had a very strong, very, very, very strong distribution agreement with the data, with the Americans. Because we were paying so much money, I tied them down to such a tight agreement, they couldn't breathe. So they could never give away the rights to certain places. The UK was a major market. Italy, Australia, I think those were the three that we had. We also, South Africa maybe. And they could never take our, Lotus could not acquire them without acquiring us. The Data EIS guys refused for that to happen. Lotus said, go away, with the acquisition is off, which was 60 million was the price.
Right.
1991, which is probably, a few hundred million now. And go away and get your act together, and then we'll look again. We go away, we can't get our act together, we go to war, eventually we get our act together, but it's a year later, too late. What's happening now on the horizon? Next lesson, Microsoft is on the horizon saying we're going to take over the software industry.
Right.
They come out with a range of products that are actually in each category. Ours, spreadsheet, database, and word processor. At the time, we were dominant. We were the dominant player in the database, 1, 2, 3 in the spreadsheet, and WordPerfect in the word processing world. Microsoft come out with the Office suite, and each one of those is facing Armageddon.
Yeah.
So we faced Armageddon, but luckily Data EIS had been used so much around the world. The long tail of Data EIS was 20 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
20 years of the long tail. It continued to be a good business for maybe 5 years after that, and then tailed down. And I only sold it off a couple of years ago after 30 years. We took it over completely eventually. I lived in the States, but it was not going to be an exit, unfortunately. So another lesson, exits come around, take it. Don't let, because they're very, very difficult to get.
Yeah.
And when they do come around, be careful not to miss it, because you do not know what's around the corner. Our black swan, not the COVID one, but our one was Microsoft, because we didn't know they were not necessarily going to be in that market, but behind the scenes, they were developing all this spreadsheet, word processor, database software. And it was a massive hit to us in mid-90s. Maybe I'm going into too much detail, but it's
no, it's interesting
story, I think, isn't it? And I think there's a lot of lessons learned during that period, and then that long tail was managed. I carried on to manage that right through to recently, but at the same time, then we had to obviously get into other things, and those things included one nice little story in the period 2001 was 9/11.
Yeah.
Right. I was in New York at the time, and we had our office in New York, and not in New York, in Connecticut. And 9/11 was, up to that period, the coroner's office in New York, or the medical examiner, as they're called, they were managing their whole process using Data EIS,
right,
our software. And what happened was, with 9/11, that all the rules of the model that they had changed, because unpleasantly, you didn't find what the coroner normally found was a complete body. With the 9/11, it wasn't. Yeah. It was thousands and thousands and thousands of body parts. So we went in there, we were called in the day after 9/11, literally. And one of our guys, who happened to be a Muslim, bravely went to the office, because this whole thing was coming out about Al Qaeda and that. But he was great, Naeem. He was the first in because he was looking after the software there, and that led to pretty much 9 years building a system. There was a new system to manage the whole of catastrophic event.
Right.
And it was called, it was changed from Data EIS. We changed it over to .NET, different language, completely different system that took a body part right through to the death certificate. And one of our guys, Adrian, he got the MBE because people were coming from Britain to, we were based in that unpleasant place where all these refrigerated trucks were with the body parts in, and they were helping tag them up and everything.
Right.
So it was a really big project. By the end of the 2000s, I sold that off. That had gone through our American subsidiary. And because Data EIS was coming down that side, I managed to sell off that company, the American company, to an Indian business owned by Moody's, the ratings agency.
Yeah.
So that was great. So that was an exit. I had a couple of exits previously to that of selling off bits and pieces out of the Sapphire Data EIS empire. And also during the 2000s, I got into offshore programming. We had an office in Russia, another great experience. We're doing all sorts of projects in Russia. Cut a long story short, then to the end of the 2000s, sold off the business. We closed our office in Russia after 10 years of building great software there. Great programmers. Anyone looking for top line programmers, first port of call is Eastern Europe, in my opinion. Then that leads us up to early 2010s. And now I am sitting with on another business called Ortegra, and we were doing web design in return for equity.
Right.
We then realized that actually what startups want, instead of us doing the work for them and getting equity, they prefer to have money.
Yeah.
Investment. So that's how Startup Funding Club started. Should we pause there, or do you want me to now talk about Startup Funding?
No, please, yeah, carry on.
Okay, so Startup Funding Club came out of that requirement. Obviously, being an entrepreneur myself, I'm very keen on other companies. So that's how we started the thing. So it was called Startup Funding Club 2012, initially an angel group. So I invited a few friends of mine to get involved and co-invest. And we then started to do events. So pitching events, which are very popular now, but in those days, there weren't many. So we did a pitching event. We kicked off at Home House, as you mentioned earlier. Great club in near Marylebone, near Marble Arch. And one of our first events, 2013, we put on a company called Onfido. Now, Onfido, I had met in my travels in Oxford. I'd gone up to Oxford to look for startups and opportunities, and met this company, which was these three young 22, 23-year-olds who'd started this company called, it wasn't called Onfido then. It was called something else to do with verify checks or something.
Yeah.
And so I said, come down to London. And so they came down and we put them in our office. So initially just 2 or 3 of them were based in our office in King's Cross, and we pitched them at the Home House event. And actually nobody was particularly interested, which I found amazing because I thought it was a great startup. One guy was interested, and he went the whole process of talking to them, and he was going to do £100,000, but backed off at the last minute because he thought it was a bit, maybe far too risky. SEIS had come out, so, not that risky. So I thought, we're not going to get any investment for this company. So I found it took 6 months to find someone else. This is now mid to late autumn 2013. And this guy, Akash, who we'd met at Home House and was also, he was young, interested in investing, thought, okay, that's worth a punt. So actually he invested, I think 60K initially. I did 12 and a half. And then he did more at a valuation of about 600,000.
Okay.
And that was, again, if I think what was the biggest success we've had? Well, we can't beat that one, actually. That takes some beating, because Onfido went from those 2 to 3 people, have raised significant funding since, 200 million in funding.
Wow.
And is now the last valuation. I actually sold part of my shareholding.
Yeah.
Remember, I said 12,500. So it was a small, I wish I'd done more, obviously, but at 12.5, I sold like £5,000 worth.
Yeah.
For 600,000.
That's a good return on capital, isn't it? Wow.
Not only that, let me point out the benefits of SEIS. That 5,000, I got half back from the government. So it was only 2.5. And secondly,
and no capital gains tax.
No capital gains. That was about 6 months ago. I'm so excited putting 600,000 on my tax return, 0 capital gains. SEIS, absolutely brilliant. And so that, as a result of things like that, we then thought, let's do a fund. So I met John, as you know, and he said he would be the fund manager, because I didn't know anything about fund management at the time. So we had John as fund management, and Startup Funding Club. We were going to go and find the deals and make the investments. So the first fund took place early 2014, as you know, and Matt was I think you did raise the large chunk of the money.
Yeah.
I think it was about 1 million we did raise. So you probably raised the bulk of that. And that set us off on the road of being a fund. And we've been ever since then. And we are now, to come up to date, if you like, because we've been doing SES EIS funds since 2014, so 7 years.
Yeah.
And every year has got more and more. And we ourselves became a fund manager in 2016. That meant that we could regulate our own activity. So we didn't have to, so we moved on from the previous partner, and we are now the #1 fund in the UK by quite a long shot for SEIS. And we also became a partner of the British Business Bank in Q1 last year, when they allocated 10 million to us to invest alongside our own funds. So where we are today, basically, we are the leading SEIS fund manager. We got that award 2 weeks ago, actually, from Growth Invest.
Congratulations.
The UK's leading SEIS fund manager. We invest in about 50 startups a year at the SEIS level. And we also have an EIS fund, which is called a follow-on fund. So when we get in early with these companies, and we've now invested in well over 200, we then can watch which ones are the stars.
Yeah.
And those ones, we will then follow up with with our investment through the EIS fund.
Okay.
So that's a really good presentation, for the investors. It makes a lot of sense, because we can show that we know these companies and that they've performed what they said they were going to perform when we invested at the SEIS level. So that's where we are today. We invest across all sectors.
Yeah.
We've got some stars, obviously, Onfido way back. Cognism, which is fantastic. That's a lead generation AI engine. They're I think they're well over 100 million valuation now. Transcend Packaging, which is they've got a massive manufacturing facility down in Wales. They're doing paper straws for McDonald's and people like that, as well as doing PPE now for the government. So they're a very, very big success, and many others as well.
Interesting. So I guess one of the kind of purposes of establishing this audio or video is for people. You know, we're in a what I consider to be probably the toughest economic cycle we'll probably find ourselves in, with COVID, all the lockdowns, you know, the impact on the hospitality and leisure industry and so on and so forth. And clearly we're both at home when normally we'd be in offices somewhere.
Yeah. And
so,
I probably wouldn't have this unshaven look, actually. So apologies for those who are watching.
And I probably wouldn't have this hair either. So we're in the same boat there. So, but I guess one of the things that I'm trying to achieve with this, and you know, one of the drivers is for people that are, you know, either in employment or maybe unemployed, or have ideas and want to go and start on their entrepreneurial journey. What's some of the advice, and what are some of the things that you look for in the companies that you work with, and also just a bit about, because I know that you're on the board of some of these companies. What's the kind of dynamics and characteristics that you know is a success based upon your experience of the investments that you guys have made?
Well, I think on the first point, COVID for me, terrible, but it is a big opportunity for people. Yeah. In a way, they're forced to have a look at whether they can become their own bosses, entrepreneurs. Unfortunately, you know, very sadly, a lot of people have been made redundant, out of work, or they might be, you know, once furlough scheme finishes. It's a great time. It really is a great time to start your own business. And the opportunities are abundant, you know, and the funding is there. You know, what we found was last year we raised more money by far than the previous year. You know, and one of our partners is Wealth Club. It's a great online platform. They raised 50% more last year than they did in 2020 than they did in 2019. Investors, you know, maybe because they're not spending on holidays or whatever, you know, they have a lot of money. The sort of angel investors and investors into funds are sitting on a lot of money at the moment. They are looking to use that. They're realizing that actually startups can be a great source of return, albeit over a period of time. But, you know, they had fantastic tax breaks on it with SEIS and EIS. And they realized that, you know, it's an alternative asset class that really does have legs. And so, you know, we've seen lots, you know, we know we're going to raise a lot of money by the end of the tax year. We're sitting on a lot now. We know that we will be doing between now and the 5th of April, at least 40 deals, you know, in the next 3 months. We know that. Yeah. You know, so a time for people to jump out of, you know, the malaise in a way of being in the corporate world. It's not, if people have any inkling of being an entrepreneur, this is the great opportunity to be it. Now, it's not easy. What do you do? You know, how do I become an entrepreneur? What actually is the idea? Well, look, find other people who might have the ideas. Find other people who are interested in, you know, in partnering up with people. You know, we tend now not to invest in single sole founders. We are really keen on teams. We've seen how the best group of people, the best investments normally are teams. You know, 2-3 people that start a company together, that are in that together, that are motivate each other, share the load, etc. So if for people who are thinking about becoming their own business, starting up their own business, don't have to do it on their own. There's lots and lots of networks out there, lots of online activity, lots of groups of people, lots of incubators, accelerators. It's a fantastic system in the UK, actually. You know, the UK is very, very, very well geared up to the startup community. And so you might not have, you know, I'm talking to a potential entrepreneur, they might not have the idea yet, but if they've got the desire, and they've got some experience of something, you know, if they are, you know, particularly if they're, let's say, a 40-year-old, 50-year-old who finds themselves out of a job, you know, you've got a lot of experience you might be able to use. Go and find one or two people that can team up with you. It won't be easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's how you do it. You don't just go and, oh, I haven't got an idea. I don't know what to do. How do I start? There's so much help online. But as I say, the best way is to find co-team members. And, it comes to the second bit. It's all about people.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship, the startup world, who we invest in, the successful businesses. It's all about the people. And I know from my experience, of 30, 40 years now, it's about having the best people. So Startup Funding Club is successful because of the people we've got.
Yeah.
Again, early on, yes, I started it on my own, but I couldn't have done it on my own by any means. And it really started to take off when we started to get the talent that we have now, 5, 6 years ago. Angelica, then Joseph, then Rahala and Ed and the team and all of them. We've got a great team now, and you've got to build a team. Anyone looking to set up a business, build a team of talent, give them part of the company. Don't be too precious on the shareholding, share it out a bit, because otherwise what's the point of having 100% of something that's useless and doing nothing?
Yeah.
Have 50% and give 50% to, employees, investors, or whatever it might be. Yeah. If you start, or start it off together and divide it up, but it's all about people.
Yeah, no, as you know, I'm a keen advocate of what you guys have done, and you approach it in my opinion, in the right way. I think there's a bit of care there for the entrepreneurs, and
yes.
As you alluded to, it's it's bloody hard, isn't it? Starting a company, particularly if you're financially things are difficult. It can be very painful, but if you can do that, then the rewards and the opportunities are endless. And I think one of the things that I've seen personally from some of the investments I've made and also from some of the entrepreneurs that I know is that thing of pivoting. And that's kind of a buzzword from a couple of years ago, isn't it? Where people come up with these ideas and then all of a sudden they just pivot and change direction. And I think if you've got the right team and you've got the right approach, then you can always raise some capital and then change the direction to something that might be more focused.
Well, my own experience at the beginning, as I said, we were in accounting software. We pivoted to financial modeling software. Then we pivoted to database software. We had 3 pivots in 2 or 3 years. On Fido, the great success, they pivoted. When we invested in them way back, it's 7 years ago, they did not have a platform. They were very early, but they were doing background checks on basically for recruitment.
Right.
What really lifted them off was pivoting. They actually got rid of that, or they subcontracted that out, and they pivoted to identity verification, which is a very different thing. So it's passports and online and, so big pivot. And that's what really triggered it. So I totally agree. Pivoting is that's why the team is the key. Talented people can almost do anything, so pivot and keep pivot until you find the right thing to do. So that's why with SEIS, for me, SEIS is all about backing the team, not the idea, all right, it's got to be good enough, but sometimes it's really, we know that team will change that and come up with and end up somewhere probably very different because they're good. And so you back at the very early stage investing, you're backing the team, and then you support them. Once you're an investor, I think sometimes investors can be antagonistic, questioning too hard, not supporting the team. We are completely the opposite. The minute we've invested, we've suddenly, as we're sitting opposite the team before we invest. The minute we invest, we're over there next to the team, aren't we?
Yeah.
To support that team and do whatever it is, whatever they need. I mean, we can't get too involved. We don't know their industries, because we invest in every industry. But we can introduce people. We can sit on the boards if we, as certainly we attend as observers to most companies, and just provide whatever introductions, whatever support, whatever positive, helping them maybe to put their corporate governance in, which is important for future rounds. So we're very much, very supportive. I think that's the key word.
I think I liken it to accepting capital to someone is basically getting married to someone, isn't it? And
yeah.
You've got to be, if you are looking to raise capital, you've got to be very careful about who you take money from, because you can't get rid of them easily. And therefore you want that marriage to be, inverted commas, marriage to be with the right partner.
And startups, companies, it does surprise me. They don't do due diligence on the investors. They should. You're absolutely right. It is a partnership that's created. Things change. The minute a startup takes in investment, they have more responsibility. They do have responsibility to that investor to try and return that investor's money plus, and they do have responsibility whatever they agreed with that investor. Some companies do not take that responsibility as strong as in the same way that in the way they should. Others do. There's a vast array of different types of attitudes, and the ones again that make it, get back to Onfido, which is for me, you could write a book about them. The attitude of the CEO in particular was fantastic. He embraced advice, he embraced mentorship, he embraced getting as many good people involved as he could to help him. There were more people at those early board meetings, more people from outside than employees.
Right.
He just was so hungry for whatever tidbit of advice and help he could give. And that was fantastic. He was open to that, and what startups and entrepreneurs really need to be is open to take in. They don't have to listen, actually use it necessarily. They should be willing to take as much advice, get to know whoever the advisor is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be the wrong person. Be careful.
Yeah.
They can get the wrong person, and then they're in deep trouble if they listen to that person. Because there's a lot of people out there who say they're advisors. We see these people, and they're not. That as well as I do. They're not advisors. They are just hanging on the coattails. But good advisors who are not there to rape and pillage the company, but there to help. Again, really important aspect of a startup. To get those people in, get advisors, mentors, pick and choose though, and do your work on who they are.
Absolutely, wise words. And so, what does the future hold for SFC Capital, as you're now called?
Yeah, well, I think what we've also done, which I didn't mention, when we became FCA regulated in 2016, we could then use that regulation for others outside of our own investment. So what we did was people we knew. So the first one we did was a friend of ours called John Spindler from Capital Enterprise, who's a great guy. And he had a fund called the AI Seed Fund. And he needed some FCA regulation and some support and help on that. So he became an appointed representative of us, and we helped him with that. And we've done now about 6 or 7 of those since, and we're quite selective. They have to be SEIS EIS funds, ideally, and they have to have some synergy with us. But, we've just authorized, just launched last night, called the Green Angel Syndicate.
Right.
Very nice fund. It's all about climate change, and we're the fund manager for that. And we just acquired a fund called Earthworm, which sadly had gone into administration because of some issues to do with the way they ran it. But we've acquired the fund itself, which is some great companies and the investor base. And we will be looking after the investors' interests in those companies, which are all again in the climate change world.
Right.
So all to do with, water, food, energy, and so on. So very nice companies in that. So we've broadened out. Actually, we've got one half of us that's doing our own investments.
Yeah.
And we're very, as I say, we've won the awards for all that, and we're doing all these investments into great new companies. And then the other half, we are helping others make investments.
Sure.
Regulating them and providing that support to them. So, so that's really where we're going. We're going to make both of those bigger. So we're going to expand both of those activities. We are hopefully going to continue as the top fund in the UK for SEIS in particular. We hope to do 100 SEIS investments a year.
Okay.
Which is pretty significant.
Yeah.
We also hope to expand our EIS fund to do more and more carry-ons. Potentially we could do a third fund which takes it from there. So we have been looking at that.
So as a kind of
EIS,
Series A type.
Series A. So that's something that's on the cards potentially.
Yeah.
Now, ideally, we would find a partner for that. We've got a strong relationships with Chinese, but we haven't been able to pursue that in the last year because of COVID. But we've got some great stuff going on there. Who might be the lead investor there? But so we're looking to potentially do that, so we can take these companies all the way through.
Yeah.
And maybe the same thing with our partners who have got invested at SEIS EIS. They can come through the same thing. We partner up with these people and we do joint investments and so on. So we will just get more and more of what we're doing and be able to provide that whole solution to these companies for their life. That's the ideal, and get some great exits.
Yeah.
For the investors.
Absolutely. No, it's rewarding to see it coming out the other end, because I know how hard it was, particularly the first couple of years, getting that money through the door. I was doing the fundraising; it was bloody hard work. There was no, there was no
It's still
apologies.
difficult. It's still hard to do that for anyone.
Yeah,
it's not easy to raise money, but I think because of our track record now, and we're well known and so on, it's that works. That's much easier than it was.
Yeah. Okay. And is there, in terms of from a personal perspective as well, obviously you've had quite a lot of success in terms of your own businesses and building things through, and I know that you're on the board of lots of companies. Do you have a kind of a structure that you adopt in terms of, disciplined start to the day, or how do you kind of function and how do you work? What's your approach?
I do, although I'm not a very disciplined person, but I'm quite a sort of flexible person. But I always start the day with yoga.
Okay.
And I always start the day, particularly with COVID, actually the last 9 months. So I'll do yoga and then I'll do either a jog or a walk.
Okay.
There's a park here. So before I eat breakfast is at least an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So normally up at 7:30, and then I don't eat until breakfast until maybe 9. Healthy breakfast, porridge or granola, kefir, fruit, whatever. And then I'll do some work, calls, mainly on bloody Zoom now, which I'm so looking forward to. I'm not really a lover of Zoom but we have to. I'm so looking forward to actually face to face again.
Yeah.
So that would be nice. But then I'll be traveling. Obviously, we've saved a lot of time because I used to travel into London every day. But so I'll do a few hours. Then I'll have late lunch, normally 2:00, 2:30. I will then do a bit more work in the afternoon. By about 6:30, I'll do some more yoga potentially.
Okay.
Depends what I did in the morning. If I did jogging, then I wouldn't do any more aerobic stuff. I would do if I didn't jog, if I walked, I'd do cycling. I've got a Peloton here.
Okay.
Which I also invested some money on the stock market with, and it's done well.
I was going to ask, at the right time before COVID, or?
Yeah, no. After I bought it.
Right. Okay.
It's still got up 30%, but I'd love to have. But and then it depends what in the evening. I will watch some TV about 9:00 for an hour or two.
Yeah.
But generally that's the day. I mean, we're all in such a routine day now. I mean, it's not very exciting in that sense.
Yeah.
Boring, yeah. But
I know that your wife is in Sri Lanka as well, because you have some property interests over there.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, must we touched on this briefly before we kind of came live, and yeah, you explained it's been quite a tricky time from a personal perspective
Yes.
during Christmas and stuff. And do you think that your kind of fairly disciplined routine in terms of exercise and yoga and all that stuff has kind of helped you to maintain your focus and stay positive throughout this?
Without question, the most important part of it, yoga's great and is very important, but the best part, the most important thing I think for anyone, you have to get outside. I know that sometimes if I miss that, because it's non-stop Zooms or whatever, I'm getting really fuzzy and cloudy and down, and it's not nice. So you have to get outside, and if you've got a park or something near you, you've got to get out there. You don't have to run, but you can just walk briskly, particularly in this when it's cold. It's very, very healthy for you. And that clears the head. It helps you. It helps me significantly to do that. You're right. I mean, I should be in Sri Lanka now. So I love Sri Lanka, and we made a big decision 6 years ago. We used to go there. We went 2 or 3 years there and bought some land. And about 6 years ago, quite a spontaneous decision was made that Veronica would stay and I would come back. So the idea was that she would live there and I would live here, but I would go there a lot and she would come here in our summer. Of course, it didn't quite work out like that. We ended up with we bought quite a lot of property, and one is a hotel down south. It's more like a small boutique, but it's on the beach.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful on the beach, you were near us actually.
Well, I was just going to mention that. So the irony was that Stephen and I have a track record of bumping into each other at airports, and we were actually on the same flight going out to Sri Lanka once, weren't we?
Yeah.
And
exactly.
then I saw you at Heathrow when I got back from Thailand another time as well.
No. Yeah. So we had a drink at the hotel you were staying, which was a very nice hotel, very near us.
That was lovely,
Much more prestigious. So we have a tiny little place in comparison, but we've got some land on the beach, which is what it's. And for me, I would still maintain that regime there. I always used to but in there, you're running barefoot on the beach first thing in the morning. I mean, I'm not sure there's anything better than that in life.
No, it's such a beautiful place, isn't it? It's incredible.
Yeah. So I haven't seen my wife since February and won't do now. I'm almost certain that we can't get out of the country, and Sri Lanka's been closed since March. So, I won't see her probably, I don't know when. So we'll see.
Yeah.
So it's a bit, it can get a bit lonely. I had a lonely Christmas and New Year, but, you have to put it in perspective to what everyone else is going. Everybody's going through something.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of your, do you have any advice in terms of books to read or guidance or quotes that you like, that kind of stuff?
I used to read a lot of books, but, funny enough, I think one of these books, you can almost summarize a book in very short. You've got, let's say a book is 200, 300 pages. Most of it is saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So I find there's a thing called Blink List. I think it's Blinkist or Blink List.
Yeah.
And they summarize books. And I would say to someone, if you want to get tips and tricks, it's a great place to go. Go to Blinkist, I think. And there's all the business books in the world are there. And you can just get the top 10 tips from each one, or the summary of each chapter, which I think is enough. You don't need to, these people they're great. And sometimes it's worth reading, about a biography of someone. But if they're general tips on running a business or that, I think using something like Blinkist is the best way. I've got loads of books, but I'm not a massive fan of reading the whole book. I try and pick bits out.
Do you use Audible at all?
Audible. Yeah, I have done. And one of our companies actually that I invested in, called Wireless Theatre,
right,
does productions for Audible.
Oh, do they? Okay.
And these are online theatre. Yeah. Fantastic, and plays. very, very interesting plays. So Audible's great, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I suppose kind of drawing to a close. Where do you see kind of growth potential in the kind of coming? Obviously, we're in the middle of the pandemic. We don't know how long this thing is going to last, but there will become a day where either the world returns to normal and accepts that COVID is a risk, or the thing dies down and disappears like it was never around. My view is that fundamentally society has changed. I think that we'll probably be more home focused. Even when things return back to normal, I don't think everyone will be wanting to be in the office 5 days a week as we probably were as a nation historically. Where do you see the growth potential? Where do you see opportunity?
Well, I think it's a great thing, this working from home bust up. What's happened to change what basically was perceived as normal, going to the office, sitting there on a desk, doing what you could do at home. But equally, there's a lot that you miss from that. So I think, personally, I think it's going to open up. I think everybody probably agrees with this. A hybrid model is what's going to happen. And I know that we will operate that. That's what I'm keen to have, is an office where we go, people can go 2 days a week, 3 days a week, almost up to them within reason. And then work from home the same, because you have to meet your colleagues. You have to meet people. You have to go out and sit in coffee shops. You have to, no spontaneity occurs sitting at home. No serendipity. I think most of the things that happened to me in my life, none of it would have happened probably, because you can't do it sitting at home. You have to get out there. So I hope that, there's going to be the hybrid model will take place, and London will get back to the wonderful city that it is, but not in the same way. I agree, the sea change will have occurred, but there will be people. I mean, everybody loves the buzz of London, and I don't think we want to give up on that. Going to London, meeting people, going for a drink after work, going to the coffee shop, whatever it is, people love that, and that will come back. I'm absolutely convinced that will come back, but in a slightly different way. As far as investments and startups and all the rest of it, anything that is, the more and more, we've seen a real speeding up of everything to do with online everything. There's a startup that there's a number of startups that have really done well as a result of COVID, and have accelerated their growth far beyond what they would have done. And they're all to do with the obvious things, with remote anything, healthcare, medtech, testing at home, diagnostics, all the stuff. It's obvious, really, but I also think hospitality will come back. It's tragic what's happened.
I know.
Again, we need it. Humans are social animals. I think in about 3 months' time, 4 months' time, we will start to see new and very interesting ventures in that space. I really do. I can't see that we're suddenly going to become sitting at home hermits. It won't be the case. We're not. We're social and human beings. So, but I think there are change. And we'll even invest in travel again. We didn't invest in any travel tech companies in this period. They've gone into hibernation generally, but they'll come out the other side. People will get back to that, and they'll be stronger. The entrepreneurs that will survive this, and the government stuff is fantastic what's been put in place. I know there's been a lot of, I'm one of the critics actually of some of it, but in general, it's held these companies together that wouldn't have been held. They would not be here now without the furlough scheme or the bounce back loan scheme, to name two of them. But they will come out the other side, hopefully. In a way, it's a test. Those that, any companies, I say, if you've gone out of business during COVID, I'm sorry, you deserve it. Really?
Harsh words. But
it is harsh words, because the government put in all the schemes to keep you in business. Furloughed everybody or take the loan, and you should come out the other side. I know I'll put this, maybe harsh words on some, I agree. There's going to be exceptions to that, of course, and particularly in hospitality. But in general, if you're a startup, in our world, if none of our startups have gone bust as a result of COVID. I mean, we've got 200 plus, none of them, because they won't. And those that will come out because of the government, those that come out the other side stronger are going to be so much better for it. And a number of them have done so well during, as I said.
Yeah. No, I agree with the sentiment. I think that, there's real opportunity. And, I've personally spent particularly the first lockdown building websites for all kind of weird and wonderful things.
Yeah.
So getting back to basics and getting my proverbial fingers and toes in the water. But so I think for me that's everything. Is there any last kind of closing comments or anything else you'd like to talk about or add?
Only that I think I'm very optimistic about the startup world and the startup space, and very optimistic that this is a great opportunity for people to get into that. If they haven't done before, take this opportunity now, because this is a one in a lifetime opportunity. It's terrible on the one hand. On the other hand, out of bad things, good things come. And that's what will happen here. There'll be some great companies started in 2020 and 2021. I'm absolutely convinced about it. We'll look back in 10 years' time and say, when were you formed then? Megastar company, 2021, 2020. Okay.
No, I agree. It's good to hear, and it, part of going through this process of interviewing different people is actually, it just inspires me. It makes me want to go and do some stuff. So no, I think that's an important part of the process.
We all need that as well at the moment. People do need to be inspired and see the optimistic side, because it is. It's very true that this is an event. It's not everything. No. It's an event. And we have to come out of it like the financial crisis. I know it's disastrous, but we come out the other side. Yeah.
Some wise words. Good. And in terms of your social media presence and online profile and all that stuff, do you use Instagram, YouTube? I know you've got a website and stuff. How do people find you?
Yeah, we use LinkedIn, of course, for very much is very important, because it's the business community.
Yeah.
We do use everything else as a company.
Yeah.
I personally don't really. I use Twitter and LinkedIn personally. Those are the two places I will look.
Sure.
More than anywhere. But there's a company we use all of them. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay, so and that's SFC Capital or Startup
SFC
Funding
Capital.
Club.
Yeah. Our website is sfccapital.com.
Yeah.
We were known, and we still use the Startup Funding Club name for one of the funds, but we're phasing it out. But it's still the essence of what we are is startup funding. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me. As I kind of mentioned earlier on, it's really great to see how your business has evolved over the years. And
you were there at the beginning with us, weren't you?
Well, I'm proud to see your achievements. Yeah. It's a nice thing to see. So well done. And good. Well, thank you for your time, Stephen, and look forward to speaking soon.
Great pleasure, Matt. Great to see you. You take care.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Growth Show with Matt Lindsay. Please like our podcast and subscribe today.